The 2024 Africa Twin Adventure Sports has had the biggest update to the Africa Twin platform since the 1000cc parallel twin version of the bike was introduced in 2016. The larger fuel tank Adventure Sports version of the bike now has a 19-inch front wheel and shorter suspension, which was intended to make this motorcycle more accessible to shorter riders and better handling on pavement. Did it work? I reviewed the previous 21-inch wheel version just 2 years ago, and that bike is still fresh in my mind, so stay tuned for the full story. Is this new version better than the older one, and where and by how much? And as always, if you're enjoying the content, please consider supporting the small channel by subscribing, liking the video, and sharing it with friends. Don't despair, the standard model Africa Twin 1100 still has the 21-inch front wheel and 9.1 inches of travel front and 8.7 out back. However, this new Adventure Sports now comes with a 19-inch front wheel and 8.3 inches of travel up front and 7.9 in the rear on the electronically adjustable suspension. As a result, the seat has dropped 0.7 of an inch and ranges from 33.7 to 32.9 inches depending on which position you install the saddle. I use the higher setting for more legroom, as the lower one has my 33-inch inseam legs a bit cramped. The bike is still too tall for my wife Brooke in the higher setting, putting her on her tippy toes, but in the lower setting she can put the balls of her feet on the ground. Her inseam is in the 30 to 31-inch range barefoot. Remember too that you can get a factory shaved seat, which brings the seat height down to 31.3 inches, making this bike suitable for a much larger range of riders. However, smaller riders should keep in mind that these bikes aren't light at 550 pounds wet. Also, when you dial up the suspension to rider, passenger, and luggage, the seat raises noticeably. These are tall and rather top-heavy motorcycles, so caution is needed. Other than the suspension changes, the rest of the bike remains largely the same. The engine on all Africa Twins has been tweaked to produce 5 pound-feet of torque extra. It is still the 270-degree parallel twin, displacing 1084cc and now making 101 horsepower and 82.6 pound-feet of torque. The acceleration is noticeably improved from last year's model, but still does not approach the Ducati Multistrada or KTM 1290 Super Adventure, which have larger engines and churn out 175 and 160 horsepower respectively. And the Africa Twin sounds like a 90-degree V-twin thanks to the 270-degree offset crank. With an accessory can, this bike will sound great. The Twin has the full suite of electronics, including rider modes and 6-axis IMU, which adjusts traction control and ABS braking to different situations. You have Touring mode, which gives you the full power, Urban mode, which tones the power down, Gravel, which adjusts to loose surfaces but still lets you power slide the rear tire a bit, and Off-road, which provides a pretty soft power delivery and traction control suited to trails. Additionally, you get 2 custom modes where you can dial in your own TC and ABS preferences. Having ridden through a deluge of rain, I would trade the Urban mode for Rain mode. I also found the traction control rather intrusive on gravel or deep sand in gravel and off-road modes. They did keep me upright and safe, but were cutting in a lot. Good for less experienced riders, but if the bike was mine, I'd set up one of the user modes for more aggressive slide action. The electronically adjustable suspension features push-button adjustment for rider, luggage, and passenger riding. It also adjusts automatically to various riding situations. In Tour mode, the suspension is sporty and tight. The previous model felt more vague with its 21-inch front wheel and longer travel suspension, but I found this one to be considerably sharper and more sporty. It's capable of tearing up a twisty road far better than any previous Africa Twin, and no longer has that tall off-road bike feeling when transitioning from side to side. It also holds a line better in long sweepers. The display has not changed and is still well thought out, intuitive, and can be Bluetooth to your phone and headset, so you can call, talk, and display your maps for navigation. Thoughtfully, Honda included an extra bare-bones display underneath, so you can still read your speed and gear while running a map on the main screen. The mirrors were wide and very smooth at any RPM, so visibility was never an issue. All Africa Twin Adventure Sports now come with Honda's DCT automatic transmission, and I've been impressed with the speed of the shifts. Honda seems to have started a thing here, as BMW's and KTM's flagship adventure touring motorcycles are also going automatic. The standard Africa Twin and BMW R1300 GS are still manual, but the bigger touring versions are auto. Market research must be telling these companies that riders who are getting all the bells and whistles on their machines anyways are also wanting to add an auto transmission. Personally, I like shifting myself, but have to admit that Honda's DCT works flawlessly. You can adjust the shifting from drive, which favors fuel economy, to sport, which holds the gears quite a bit longer and lets the bike rev out before shifting. You can also shift manually with a couple of paddles, but not being used to this, I didn't try the feature. The shifts were so quick and smooth that they were barely noticeable and didn't upset the bike at all in corners. I'm not sure if it's just my imagination or if the drive option is set up a bit more aggressively than on the previous model. The bike was either holding the gears a bit longer during hard acceleration or just felt that way due to the extra torque the engine now puts down. Who's gonna want DCT over manual? Riders who ride a lot in stop-and-go traffic or on hilly terrain where you have to ride the clutch to start on an uphill. Riders who have arthritis in their hands, who don't want to be working a clutch all the time, and quite frankly, riders who like convenience. I like manual shifting, but a couple of weeks on this machine and you get rather comfortable with the DCT. I like to keep myself uncomfortable and have a direct line to the motorcycle, but there is something to be said for having one less thing to worry about. Perhaps more automatic transmissions will make motorcycling less intimidating to new riders and attract more folks to the hobby. Where the DCT can be at a disadvantage is in tight turns, either on very tight single track or in parking lots. As in any automatic vehicle, the throttle is either on or off, which does not give the rider the same control as feathering the clutch. Lower speeds are slightly harder to modulate, making this bike more of a handful, as this is where the rider controls speed more with the clutch than the throttle. So on pavement, the Adventure Sports is much improved, as the handling is considerably better than its predecessor, especially when it comes to sporty riding. The bike handles well and holds a solid line through the corner. It's heavy, but the lower center of gravity allows for much more nimble transitions from side to side. The Adventure Sports is comfortable and provides very good weather protection. The windshield is adjustable, and in the higher position it kept the bugs off the helmet and sat just below my field of vision. On gravel, the bike shoots right along with gravel mode, allowing for some limited power slides and sliding the rear wheel. The tires are very road oriented and are not great in deeper sand or gravel, but in most light off-road situations they do alright. I had taken the previous model of the Africa Twin Adventure Sports on single track where it made it through but was an absolute elephant in a china shop. With less suspension travel and ground clearance, I skipped the single track this time, as this bike is not built for it, nor will it be taken on it by the vast majority of owners. However, the Adventure Sports chugs down less gnarly trails confidently and might be even better suited for those than last year's model. When suspension and ground clearance are not major issues, the lower seat makes the new model easier to control in precarious situations. Being able to put your feet down more easily is good for the old confidence and for preventing tip overs. The DCT makes standing easy because you don't need to work the clutch and shifter, and stalls on steep hills are a distant memory. But this motorcycle is not built for gnarly off-road, but for serious touring, mostly on pavement. Set the cruise control at a high speed and enjoy the creature comforts. Good seat, roomy seating position, plenty of luggage options, enough power, great suspension, impressive handling, cool Dakar-inspired looks, and good fuel economy and range. I'm not sure if it's my imagination, but the fuel range may be a bit lower on this model than on the previous one. I got 500 kilometers or 300 miles out of the 25-liter tank on the previous model riding it hard, but somewhat less this time around even though the tank has not changed. It may be a result of the extra torque, a more aggressive tour mode shifting map, or just my riding. Perhaps this more pavement-oriented model had me running it more in the sports shifting map. Theoretically, with a light throttle hand and moderate speed, 600 kilometers is achievable out of the 25-liter tank. Passenger seat has not changed and is wide and comfortable with large grab rails to hold onto. There's also a standard luggage rack and solid metal bash plate. The Africa Twin Adventure Sports competes with the other big adventure touring motorcycles, and while it is down on power to the Ducati, KTM, Triumph, and a few others, it can still haul pretty fast through the twists and turns. The only place it won't keep up will be in the straights at license-losing speeds which most owners will never hit. Though a bit down on power, the Adventure Sports makes up for it by being easier to ride off-road than most of the others, by being Japanese, which means that it is likely more reliable than Euro and American competition, and by having a larger dealer network with excellent parts availability. I like Japanese bikes, I cannot lie. This platform has been around for a while now and has proven to be bulletproof. However, the lack of a shaft drive, which the Triumph, Yamaha, and BMW have, will lose some potential customers. Price-wise, the Adventure Sports cost $17,600 US and around 21,000 Canadian, which is actually a little less than the DCT version of the bike last year. The Canadian price includes freight and PDI, and these prices compare favorably with the competition from other brands. The Yamaha Super Tenere 1200 is the only big bike that has a clear value edge over the Adventure Sports. Like with the previous version, I greatly enjoyed my time on this motorcycle. It can do just about anything except for hardcore off-roading. In this crowded class, you're used to brain-melting acceleration and you won't get that on the Adventure Sports, but 100 horsepower is plenty for me and the added torque is welcome. Any more power would put my license in jeopardy. So, is the Africa Twin Adventure Sports a better motorcycle than last year's model? For most riders, yes. The bike has more torque and has considerably improved its handling on the road where it will spend the vast majority of its time. Its lower center of gravity also means that most riders will have an easier time with it on and off-road. The riders who are concerned about losing the bigger front wheel, some suspension travel, ground clearance, or manual option can save some money and get the standard Africa Twin model, which retains its superior off-road ability. Honda has streamlined the two versions of the Africa Twin and aimed the standard model at off-roaders and the Adventure Sports at pavement adventure touring riders. I doubt that fans of the Adventure Sports will complain about a lower seat and sportier performance in the twisties, even if it comes at the expense of some off-road ability. Personally, I'd choose the base Africa Twin in manual as it has everything I'm looking for in an adventure motorcycle, except shaft drive. However, I can see the Adventure Sports being very popular with the long-distance crowd. But what about you? Are you on board with this new model and 19-inch wheels on adventure motorcycles in general, or would you prefer to scour the dealerships for leftover taller 2023 bikes? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Adventure on, and may the spokes be with you.